who he is, how he entered politics, and how he convinced New Yorkers. Who is Zohran Mamdani, and how did he go from a local organizer to the mayor-elect of New York City? In this video, we will take a calm, neutral look at his life story, his political career, and the ideas that helped him win one of the most watched elections in the United States. Zohran Mamdani was born in 1991 in Kampala, the capital of Uganda. He is the only child of two well-known public figures, the political scientist Mahmoud Mamdani and the filmmaker Mira Nair. Both of his parents are of Indian origin, and his family history stretches across East Africa and South Asia. When Zohran was a young child, his family moved several times, eventually settling in New York City when he was around 7 years old. He grew up in Queens and attended New York City public schools, later studying at the Bronx High School of Science, one of the city's most competitive public high schools. After that, he went to Bowdoin College in Maine, where he studied Africana studies, focusing on the history and politics of Africa and the global South. He became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 2018. All of these experiences, growing up in an immigrant family, living in New York, studying inequality and colonialism, shaped how he sees politics and power. Before holding any elected office, Mamdani worked in several different roles. For a time, he was a housing counselor, helping tenants in New York deal with eviction threats and housing problems. He also spent time as a musician and worked on local political campaigns. In the mid-2010s, he volunteered and then worked as a campaign manager for progressive candidates in New York City, including Qadir El-Yatim's run for city council and Ross Barkan's run for state senate. These campaigns did not always win, but they gave him experience in community organizing, door-to-door outreach, and the basics of New York City politics. During this period, he became active in the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, focusing on issues such as housing, public services, and criminal justice reform. His own electoral career began with the New York State Assembly. In October 2019, Mamdani announced that he would run for the assembly seat in District 36, which covers Astoria and parts of Western Queens. He challenged a 5-term Democratic incumbent, Arabella Simotas, from the left. His campaign platform stressed housing reform, police and prison reform, and more public control over utilities like electricity. He was endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America and other progressive groups. The primary election in June 2020 was very close and took weeks to count, but eventually, Mamdani was declared the winner. There was no serious Republican opposition in the general election, so he took office on January 1st, 2021. He was re-elected in 2022 and 2024 without major opposition, becoming a familiar figure in Queens politics. As an assembly member, Mamdani served on multiple committees dealing with cities, energy, taxation, elections, and aging, and he joined several legislative caucuses representing Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian communities, as well as New Americans. He sponsored and co-sponsored hundreds of bills. Among his most visible projects was support for a pilot program that made certain New York City bus lines fare-free, an experiment in expanding public transit access. He also joined a hunger strike alongside taxi drivers who were protesting heavy debt and calling for relief from the city. These actions helped build his image as a left-wing, working-class-focused politician who was willing to use protest as well as legislation. In October 2024, Mamdani announced something much more ambitious, a campaign for mayor of New York City in the 2025 election. At first, many observers saw him as an outsider with little chance. He was young, relatively new to elected office, and openly identified as a democratic socialist. His campaign, however, had a clear, simple theme: affordability. He argued that working-class New Yorkers were being pushed out of the city by high rents, low wages, and rising costs. His platform included fare-free city buses, universal public childcare, city-owned grocery stores to fight food prices, a rent freeze on rent-stabilized apartments, the construction of more affordable housing, and a gradual increase of the minimum wage to $30 an hour by 2030. To pay for these ideas, he supported higher taxes on large corporations and on individuals earning above $1 million per year. How did he convince so many New Yorkers to back this agenda? Commentators point to several factors. First, his campaign made very heavy use of social media, especially TikTok and other short video platforms. Clips of Mamdani speaking directly to camera in simple language about rent, grocery bills, and public transit spread widely online and reached many younger voters. Second, his campaign finance model focused on small donors. A large share of his funding came from contributions under $250, and the campaign reported tens of thousands of individual donors. Third, he tapped into existing networks of tenant unions, labor organizers, and left-leaning community groups that had already worked with him during his assembly years. Endorsements from national figures like Senator Bernie Sanders and coverage in major newspapers helped turn his local campaign into a national story. The 2025 mayoral race was closely watched. Mamdani faced former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who ran as an independent and Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa. Many expected Cuomo to dominate the race, but the result was a surprise. Mamdani won the Democratic primary by a clear margin and went on to win the general election, becoming the 111th mayor of New York City. His victory made him one of the youngest mayors in the city's history, and its first Muslim and first South Asian or Indian American mayor. For many supporters, this was a historic moment for representation in U.S. politics. At the same time, his campaign also drew criticism and controversy, especially over his positions on Israel and Palestine. Some opponents used Islamophobic language or referenced terrorism in attacks on him, while his supporters argued that this showed the persistence of anti-Muslim bias in American politics. As mayor-elect, Mamdani has begun to signal what his administration will try to do. He has promised to end city sweeps of homeless encampments and to shift policy toward connecting people to permanent housing rather than treating homelessness as an issue of public order alone. He has repeated his support for LGBTQ+ rights and for reforms to the way policing and public safety work in the city. At the same time, he faces legal and political tests around issues like boycotts of Israel, relations with federal authorities, and concerns from business groups about his tax and spending plans. Supporters see him as someone trying to make New York fairer and more affordable. Critics worry about the cost of his proposals and their impact on the city's economy. Zohran Mamdani's story is still being written. He is a child of immigrants who grew up in Queens, a housing counselor who became a state legislator, and now a mayor-elect who promises big changes in how the city treats work, housing, and public services. Whether his ideas will succeed and how they will reshape New York City will depend on future elections, negotiations with other levels of government, and the everyday experiences of millions of New Yorkers. For now, his rise shows how quickly a new voice can move from local organizing to the center of one of the world's most famous cities. If you found this profile useful, please like the video, subscribe for more neutral political profiles, and tell us which public figure we should cover next.